Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Priyanka. So, good afternoon. We can see we are getting a lot of messages regarding the clarity on the topic. So there are a few sessions lined up. Today, we are starting the discussions with this session, a very, very important topic, generic versus branded drugs. The pharma industry is looking forward to what is going to happen in this particular segment, especially. Good afternoon, a very good afternoon. So it's already 12, and I think people will keep joining in, welcoming everyone again. And let me formally start the session for today. We are live at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube channel of PharmaState Academy also. So in case any network issues happen, you can watch the session directly on social media also. So starting with the session now, I am Swati, moderator for today for the session on generic versus branded drugs, what is right for India. And I welcome to a thought-provoking discussion on this topic. It is resonating deeply with each one of us who are in pharmaceutical industry or in healthcare as doctors also. Yes, there is no need to answer the topic, the question like why we planned this session. We all know why these sessions are now planned. I'll just take you through a very small premise. In a country as diverse and dynamic as ours, healthcare decisions hold immense significance. And hence, when these NMC guidelines, came recently, and these have actually stirred the conversation further, introducing new dimensions to an already complex disclosure. We all were discourse was going on, and these guidelines actually have stirred all of us. The choice between generic and branded drugs is not merely a matter of affordability versus quality. That is the talk going on right now in the healthcare industry. It's also about finding a balanced approach that addresses accessibility, effectiveness, and trust in medications. Today, we gather our expert panel to decipher the intricacies, weigh the pros and cons, and chart a path forward. So as we navigate this dialogue, we invite our esteemed panelists to share their insight, drawing from their extensive experience in healthcare industry and more. Together, let's illuminate the factors that guide this decision-making process and strive to find the best suited solution for our diverse population. So our collective exploration begins now. We have today with us our esteemed panel members, Mr. Ambi Parameswaran, Ms. Gauri Chaudhary, and Mr. Prashant Menon. Going ahead, let me just quickly introduce the panel for the benefit of all. Mr. Ambi Parameswaran is a brand strategist and founder at brandbuilding.com, executive coach and team coach, faculty and speaker in a career spanning 40+ years. Ambi has handled assignments in marketing, sales, and advertising with Rediffusion Advertising, Boots Company, UDI, Yellow Pages, and over 25 years with FCB Ulka Advertising. He served as VP, then as CEO of FCB Ulka from 2003 to 2013, and was a key member of the team that turned around Ulka from a loss-making ad agency to a top 3 marketing communications group. Ambi has helped build numerous brands, including Daikin, Brufen, Santur Soap, Sundrop Cooking Oil, TCS, ICICI Bank, Wipro, Indica, Zee TV, among a lot of others. Welcome, Mr. Ambi, to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here.
Next panelist is Ms. Gauri Chaudhary. We all have heard from her time and again. Her book, The Perfect Pill, was a very good guide, and its 2nd edition is also running as the bestseller. She is co-founder at Brand Innoworld. She is a pharma and healthcare marketing, advertising, and branding expert with over 27 years of experience. Gauri has been working on various kinds of healthcare brands for almost 3 decades. She has worked on ethical prescription brands, over-the-counter, quasi-over-the-counter medical devices, surgical, nutrition, and wellness, and many more hospital brands also. She actively contributed to the RX to OTC switches of the Indian pharmaceutical industry flagship brands. She has worked on patient awareness television campaigns, including anti-AIDS campaigns by Johns Hopkins and USAID and the knee replacement campaign. In addition, Gauri provides coaching and training sessions for pharma and healthcare marketing teams. She also serves as an advisor on the boards of renowned pharma research company, and she headed healthcare business of FCB Ulka and was a part of global team at FCB Healthcare, New York. At the beginning of her career, she has worked in brand management teams of Knoll Pharmaceuticals and Boehringer Ingelheim. She enjoys writing and has contributed several articles to leading pharma and healthcare publications. Her book, The Perfect Pill, was the bestseller in 2020. And now again, it is bestseller as in the revised edition. And it is actually very nicely placed for this debate, generic versus branded. Welcome, Ms. Gauri Chaudhary.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And the third panelist for today, Mr. Prashant Menon, founder, director at Workplace Dynamics. He has more than 25 years of corporate experience in healthcare industry, where he began his journey in sales, then moved into marketing and general management, and finally headed organizations as their managing director. He has worked with large Indian MNCs and Spanish MNC. He has completed 2 postgraduate programs in marketing after a bachelor's degree in microbiology, so a learner. He is visiting faculty at NMIMS Mumbai and a member of board of studies at Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Mumbai. Prashant has 3 internationally certified coach credentials related to executive and team coaching. He is a recipient of the top 100 marketing influencers in 2016, recognized by World Marketing Congress. He is an often invited and valued leadership and strategy speaker at various industry academia forums and management institutes of India. So welcome, Prashant. We have the panel ready for today's discussion.
Thank you.
A disclaimer, before we start the session formally, the views expressed by the panelists in this session are their own and do not reflect the opinions of the organizers. This discussion aims to provide diverse insights on the topic of generic and branded drugs for educational purposes only. So formally starting the session, Ms. Gauri, for the benefit of all the participants today who have joined us live, please take us through some terms, terminologies, and topics which gives clarity in the basic format. Over to you to give us that clarity within 15 to 20 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Swati. And am I audible? Am I clear? Yeah, let me know anytime, if there isn't any clarity, just let me know. So I'll get my internet connection fixed in case there is an issue. So thank you so much once again. And indeed, it was my pleasure that my second edition of the book did pretty well and I was getting calls. But come 2nd August, and the nature of the calls changed. Like I distinctly remember the NMC came out with this regulation and there were 4 calls. I mean, to tell you honestly, the first, there were 3 calls and 1 text message. And the first one was from my uncle who is on multiple medicines. And he called me and he said that, Gauri, is it that medicines are going to be cheaper now? And I said, yes, probably, but he was not ready to listen. He said, you guys cheated us all this while. And now, you're saying that it's going to be cheaper. So what were you doing all this while? You were cheating us? Second call was from one journalist who tried to ask, what is this whole thing, generic versus branded drugs is? And the minute I started speaking slightly in the favor of branded generics, she was not interested. And after a point when I saw that my name was not mentioned in her so little negative news piece, I realized that not that many are ready to hear the positive news of branded generics. And of course, those who have read my book probably would know Dr. Annapure, who is doing real good work for poor people in the slums of Mumbai. And he just texted me saying that today we are branded as crooks. I tried to respond back to him, but he said, that's okay. I mean, I don't want validation from you. After all, we are crooks in this field. And the last call came from one young pharma brand manager who was trying to be, he was in the sales for many years, who was trying to be brand manager. He just became brand manager. And he said, "Oh, ma'am, am I going to lose my job?" Again, when I tried to say something, he said, "It's okay. I mean, whatever is the fate is the fate." So the point is that all this discussion needs time. You can't answer anything about branded generics versus generic debate just in a minute. Like all the 4 phone calls with 4 different emotions called me. And the minute I would try to explain anything to them, either it would become too complex to them, or it was just not possible to go beyond a particular point. And therefore, I would like to thank you, the PharmaState Academy, for one, keeping this session, keeping it in a format where you have more than one line to speak, where one can put forward views. And I think somewhere the doctors have spoken, the activists have spoken, the patients have spoken, but in my personal opinion, pharma industry hasn't got the chance to speak. So probably I would be coming from that angle, slightly more from the branding of the medicines, because that's the field in which I have been there, but open to all kind of discussions. And, Ambi is here, he's the branding expert, and he has beautifully worded the foreword of my book. Just in 900 words, he puts forward his thinking. Prashant has been there for years contributing to this industry, but all of us are absolutely open to hear and listen to each and every view, because the title of this session is Branded versus Generic. What is right for India? Not what is right for me and you or the pharma industry, but what is right for India. So I have a short deck, and Swati, Dr. Swati, with your permission, if I can share it. Yeah, Swati, is it possible? Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. So quickly, I'll take you through some of these words. I also know in the audience, there are a few people who are not from pharma industry. So just for them to understand. So this entire debate is what is right for India. So those who probably, all of us have already heard about this particular regulation, but pertinent to branded generics, the NMC regulation said that all doctors must prescribe generic drug only, failing which they will be penalized and even their license to practice may be suspended. What it essentially meant that no more the brand names would be mentioned in prescription, and a paracetamol will be called paracetamol, and amoxicillin clavulanic acid probably would have to be prescribed exactly with these 2 words. If you say any brand name, probably doctor's license would be suspended. Now, this was a big jolt, though this was not a surprise that this kind of regulations and guidelines were coming from 2020, then 2021, 2022, this wasn't a surprise. But yet in a complex healthcare field, sometimes it becomes difficult to understand what do these names actually mean. We have brand name medicines, we have branded generic medicines, we have generic medicines. And I remember last time I had tweeted that the branded generics are necessary for India. I actually got trolled on Twitter saying that how can you even have this word called branded generics? Either you have brands or you have generics. But just for us to understand it better, and I can quickly take everyone through it, is that brand name medicine is essentially the medicine that is under patent. For example, metformin, probably by, metformin by BMS has decided to call it glucophage. So it is a brand name medicine or patented medicine. Then we have branded generic, which is a medicine that is no more under patent, yet has a specific name given to it. All those 137 metformin brands which are sold under different names actually fall under branded generic. And then there is this generic, which is a medicine that is no more under patent, but has no specific brand name assigned to it, which means metformin being sold as metformin. There are a lot of other words which also move around, which are like authorized generic, non-authorized generic, but we are not going to get into it. We'll just stick to these 3 names which are prevalent more in India. if we look at India's overall scope, we have 3% brand name medicine or patented medicines, 87% branded generic medicines, and 10% pure generic medicines. Now, is India the only country with branded generics? And this is the question. A lot of people believe that India is the only country where branded generics are present. The answer is big fat no. Branded generics are almost available in each and every country, which also includes USA. Of course, the percentage differs, but percentage also differs because of the rules related to insurance and the push insurance companies have. But almost each and every company, every country, you would find branded generics. In fact, as per the Globe News Wire, which has just published their report, 22% of USA's generic market is made up of branded generic. And these branded generics are growing at 10% in the US. The reason being, more and more people want trusted brand name behind their medicine. And this is not only in the US, even several other countries, we do see brands being more and more popular in the healthcare space. Of course, they are governed by limitations of insurance companies who do not allow them to go for brands that easily. But yes, branded generics are growing there. So if anyone thought that branded generic is all that jugaad of Indian minds and some money inventing machine, then well, it is not. It is not that jugaad. In fact, several countries and several governments are allowing and going forward with branded generics. Now, why branded generics exist? As all of us know, that brands provide trust, confidence, consistency of quality, and they take up the responsibility of that quality. Second, all brands are meant to be adding value, those values which are beneficial to the consumers and customers. And yet, branded medicines or branded generics are cheaper than patented medicines. And that's why you see in varying degrees across a part of Europe, Africa, Latin America, Russia, you will find we have number of branded generics. But why should there be branded generics in India? And that's the question a lot of activists keep asking, because these branded generics tend to be slightly expensive than the generic. And yet there are 5 key reasons why, particularly in India, we have branded generics. The first is only 0.1% of medicines in India are tested for quality. Now, this number is really small. So when a brand is introduced and when brand takes the responsibility of its quality, it's a welcome thing. The second important thing is person who dispenses medicines to patients may not be a qualified chemist. All of us know that by regulation, there has to be one chemist in every shop, but every person in that shop who is selling the medicine need not be a chemist, and therefore may lack capability and capacity to give what exactly patient needs. I mean, imagine somebody giving diclofenac to a patient, and the patient has ulcers in abdomen, peptic ulcer. What if that diclofenac is not enteric coated? It can have a devastating impact on that patient. After all, someone will say diclofenac is diclofenac, give generic diclofenac. But the kind of repercussions or the kind of side effects that patient would face just because the patient is suffering from some kind of ulcers would be really fatal. So whether the person who is selling the medicine has capacity and capability to give the right medicine is a question mark. And that's the second reason why in India we see branded generics. The third is there is always a tension between patients and doctors. We have huge population of Indians and relatively much lesser number of doctors. And this really gets further skewed as we go down in the rural area. There has always been tension between these two segments of healthcare ecosystem. And when somebody who is responsible for patients' health is not deciding on the medicine he is giving, then this tension can increase. And with the first 2 points, we already know a generic medicine may or may not fulfill all the requirements a doctor wants from a medicine. And this tension can only increase if branded generics have to really be banned. The third is, there are no e-records, though government is now coming out and saying that there will be digital records of all prescription. But there is a difference between saying it in theory and implementing it in practice. Currently, there are no e-records. So it's the patient who goes and says that, look, doctor, I'm suffering from this, and these are the 3 medicines I'm already taking. Or last time, these were the 3 medicines my other doctor gave, but all this conversation is absolutely verbal. So when a woman, a young lady who might be on contraceptive pill, can't go and really say that, hey, doctor, I'm taking pills which are norgestrel and ethinyl estradiol tablets. It's much easier for her to say, doctor, I'm taking overall. Maybe, somebody suffering from diarrhea can't really go and say, hey, doctor, I am on loperamide hydrochloride. It's a lot easier for that patient to go and say, hey, doctor, I took Roko. So the whole concept, somebody may say, oh, this is so tactical, but it is so very practical. Imagine somebody going educated or uneducated, not being able to say the right thing and not having any physical copy of the previous prescription. The issue could be a lot more difficult. And in my opinion, this 5th point is equally important. And there is a strong trend amongst Indians to move from commodities to brands. Be it shoes, clothes, education, finances, we all are moving towards brands. As the GDP of this country will increase, and as the per capita income of Indians would increase, there will be higher propensity for people to move towards brands. So the fundamental question is there, how can anyone force people to buy health commodities, generics or brands? The choice has to be with patients. It cannot be with any governing authority. A lot of people need generics and they must get generic, because between no medicine versus low-cost medicines would always win. But the point is, the choice has to be with people and not with any government authority. So why the NMC or consumer groups are against branded generics? Is something going fundamentally wrong with branded generics in India? Is it something really not going in line? And that's why again and again, people in general, government bodies on an average, and consumer groups are against branded generics. Yes. The answer is profound yes. There's something really not gone right with this industry. And there's a lot of learning and critically looking at our practices is extremely important. Though called brands, many companies, and let me qualify it here, not all companies, but many companies are selling generics. And instead of creating pull in the market, instead of adding value to the brands, these brands are surviving on requests, pleading doctors or pushing doctors and telling them, prescribe this brand of my medicine. In reality, that brand can be easily replaced by another generic. And this is the problem, which if not corrected, again and again, these bodies are going to come out. People are going to be angry, like my uncle who just told me that, oh, you were cheating us all this while. So this is a fundamental problem. And therefore, the NMC guidelines are wake-up call for all of us. And we have to see to it that fundamentally something changes in this industry. So I was very lucky in my initial years, and Ambi is here. And I remember, Ambi, I don't know if you remember, but you would always tell us that think brands. You always would say, stop this molecule thinking, think brands. Understand the gaps, differentiate, and build relevance. You can't say I'm selling brand of this molecule. Point is that I'm selling solution to that one patient who is facing the issues, and this one physician who is finding it difficult to provide the right patient outcome. That has to be thinking. And if that thinking comes in place, keeping patient at the center and aiding every physician, I don't think anybody from outside can point fingers at us. And because of my early experience, actually, I wrote this book. And in this book, I have put hundreds of examples showcasing differentiated brands and how those brands were originally branded generics. I mean, you can call them branded generics, but how value got added in these brands. And as a result of which, there was ultimate win-win between patients, physicians, and pharma companies, because at the end of everything, all of us have just one objective. And the objective is to provide healthcare solution to that one patient who is suffering from the issues related to his disease. So still, often the question is that how can I add value to a brand when the molecule is the same? So the answer is very simple. Think patients, think their pain points. And, through a lot of examples in the book, I have talked about how formulations make a difference. I just talked about diclofenac with enteric coated. There are sustained release, there are novel releases, there are slow release, fast release. There are so many options. And we pharmacists know how to really create formulations which help reduce pain points of the patients. So first and foremost, obviously formulations. Second is also presence of an excipient. Taking the same example of diclofenac, just see how diclofenac topical increases, the topical formulation would increase its penetration just because there is linolenic acid added to it. So what excipient have you added? So in a generic world, all diclofenac topical creams would be the same, or topical gels would be the same. But in branded generic market, there would be a one with linolenic acid, another with capsicum extract, to give counter irritation. So you can play around with the presence of excipients you have, or absence of excipients. For example, if you are selling eye drops, if that eye drop has preservative, then the eye drop is going to cause irritation to the eye. So how can you reduce preservative, or how can you change to another preservative? Drug delivery system or enhanced quality. All generics can pass 35% marks, like all of us know that we pass exams with 35%. But to get real entry into good college, you need 90-95%. Likewise, quality is a spectrum. It is not just a number. How can you increase enhanced quality? Maybe by choosing right raw materials, maybe by choosing right kind of, getting right kind of test done. Simple thing like color of your medicine itself is so important. Imagine a person who is depressed is taking dull brown tablets day in and day out, vis-a-vis with a vibrant, nice color. All of us know that placebos work. It's our industry which has got this concept of placebo, that even a chalk, calcium carbonate, can give you positive effects. So imagine how we can actually add value and help improving health outcomes of patients. Size of a formulation or tablet or a capsule, or taste of the syrup, packaging, patient education, pill plus services, maybe to enhance diagnosis, enhance treatment, or improve adherence, or simply like brand identity, logo, visuals, all of them put together can improve patient outcomes. And they give us opportunity to differentiate brands. And of course, price. Giving the right, assigning the right price to your brand, depending on the value it adds, looking at the patient segment who can afford it, we can differentiate brands. So India is a country of many Indias. Patient needs differ across geographic, demographic, psychographic segments. And therefore, one size fit all approach doesn't work anymore. In fact, as people are moving and becoming more savvy about their own health, they don't want one size fit all approach. Understanding pain points of patients and physicians is the key to arrive at customized solutions to each and every patient. For example, like I have spoken about this human mixtard, which has generic insulin. I have talked about in a book, because in my early days, I used to listen to the stalwarts building this brand. And I, as a young learner, used to always keep listening how this brand got built. Just to give you a flavor of it, is that disease might be the same, but the solution need to be different, was a principle behind building this brand. So there were several combinations of insulin, long acting and short acting, were launched in the market. The reason was that everybody may have diabetes, but everybody need not take the same insulin. We have to customize it. But because there were so many variants of human mixtard, the company decided to color code the caps of the vials. Because the company could think of that boy at the chemist counter who was going to dispense human mixtard to diabetic patients. And what if he makes a mistake? If he gives a wrong combination? And what if that patient actually doesn't really look at the label and lands up taking an injection of a wrong insulin strength? All of you may know that wrong dose of insulin can be fatal. Person can die because of that. And hence, human mixtard decided to color code each and every insulin, each and every vial of their variant. Now, if it's the same generic, then a doctor wouldn't know what strength would go to the patient. So when he prescribed, or when she prescribed human mixtard, they were very sure that there was right medicine going to the patient. Another very important thing human mixtard did, and that's what I'm talking about when I talk about value addition. The entire supply chain was into cold chain for human mixtard. Because India is a hot country, your temperatures go up to 45, 50 degrees. Now we know that insulin is heat sensitive. It will lose its efficacy if it is exposed to extreme temperature. And therefore, human mixtard, so the company behind, actually made the entire chain the entire supply chain was a cold chain. And they didn't leave the last mile. The stockist who actually carries medicines to the retailer and goes to the retailer's fridge had ice box with him, even on the cycle. So at no point the brand was exposed to the heat, which was beyond, which was not right for human mixtard. And very importantly, education. Teach that chemist boy who is on the cycle while he's carrying this medicine. Teach that chemist boy. Educate the patient, educate the doctor, as a result of which the patient suffering from diabetes gets the right medicines and gets the right effect of that medicine. The company also came out with pens for an executive who is going to the office every morning. It's difficult for him to carry a vial and an injection, a syringe, and inject himself. Instead, the brand came out with this kind of innovation where pre-filled pens were launched. And I'm talking about I'm talking about 1990, 95. That is when this innovation came. And it helped the patient actually to carry their insulin syringe in their pocket and inject themselves when the need was, and not postpone their injection. Throughout human mixtard journey, education was the key. Educating primary physicians, telling them who is the right patient for insulin, how they should choose the patient, when they should not delay prescription of insulin, or when they should delay the prescription of insulin. So all this went behind so-called branded generic, which was actually lesser of generic and strongly of a brand, though essentially it was just another brand of insulin. Today, there are chatbots for patients to understand their health and understand their disease. So can anyone really call it a generic? And that's my question. And when somebody says ban generics, what happens to this kind of value addition? Another, I really like this particular brand, and I often mention it. Again, I've mentioned it in the book, that MediaMedic, the company, came out with one app for Alkem's brand of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And I was so thrilled when my friend, who is head of MediaMedic, explained to me about this particular app that they created. So we all know patients who suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia, they just stray away, they wander away. And because of their disease, they don't remember their own name, they don't remember their address. And more than this disease, what worries patients is losing their family member. So this brand actually came out with mobile alert. So the phone in the patient's pocket, it sends mobile alert to all the family members the moment this patient goes away certain distance from his home, and immediately the family knows where the patient is and they can go and get the patient back home. Now, this is the value I'm talking about when we are talking about brands of these generics. So therefore, every branded generic has to be value-added brand, keeping pain points of patients, physicians, caregivers at the center in such a way that patient outcomes are improved. So in my book also, there is this QR code, and this QR code actually gives downloadable templates, which if you download, you can actually get you can work on those templates and arrive at your own brand's value proposition. And the whole idea of doing this was that somewhere we all feel that we must add value to our brands. Otherwise, we are going to get this kind of flack from all authorities and bodies. So this particularly QR code, because we are at the topic, I'm just saying that this helps any brand manager or any pharma marketer arrive at the pain points of different segments of patients, challenges faced by physicians, and what must your brand can do to ease it. And of course, how can your brand improve patient outcomes? All one requires is 2 hours of without disturbance time. You all can sit together without having any great formulation development, because a lot of marketers come and tell me, how can we tell R&D to create some great formulation? But no, maybe your existing brand may have huge value if your end goal is to improve patient outcomes. So finally, does this mean that there is no place for generics in India? Of course not. Generics, as I said even before, generics are equally important. And good quality and abundant quality of generics is important, not just 10%. We have to increase that number. And we have to have a good balance of value-added brands of generics and quality generics, quality and affordable generics. So therefore, if the title of this session was branded and generic versus generic, I think it should change to branded and generic. It's not one versus the other. Both of them have a place, and country like India, we must talk about branded and generics. And if we are operating in branded generic market, as a marketeer, it's our responsibility to build value-added brands. If we are just making them another generic, we don't have any right to exist in the industry. And we have to build them in such a way that nobody would want to ban branded generics anymore. They are very essential to a country like India. And if not, sell high quality generics at the least possible cost. So thank you very much and happy branding. This is what I really wanted to say, and I wanted to say to everybody who was calling me that time. But thanks PharmaState Academy for giving me this opportunity and say what I truly believe in. Thanks.
Thank you, Gauri ma'am. That was very, very pertinent to the topic, what you were speaking during the presentation, what your book stands for. And yes, we are hoping that we are able to amend the session's name in the next session. We may call it generic and branded till further notice comes from the government and all agencies. Looking forward to the panel discussions. There are very incisive questions. There will be heated debates also. So moving towards the panel discussion now. And 2-3 questions directly I'm asking to Mr. Ambi and Prashant to answer. India has a diverse population with varying economic backgrounds. That is what Gauri also emphasized in her presentation. Branded drugs often come with higher price tags. That's the truth. And it's truth because the money goes to research and marketing investments also. And hence they are highly tagged. The question goes to Mr. Ambi, what value addition can a branded generic do actually?
Well, I think, thank you, Dr. Swati, for hosting this, and thank you for inviting me. And I think after listening to Gauri, I think no one here will have a doubt on what is the role of a branded generic. So let's me just clarify that do we need pure generic, low cost, pure generic medicines in this country? We need, definitely we need, just as we have a public distribution system which distributes, atta, chawal, and kerosene. We need that. We need that because 30% of this country is poor, living virtually below poverty line, and they need low cost medicine. And they go to public hospitals, and therefore in public hospitals there is a good idea to ensure that they get low cost but good quality medicine which they can afford to buy. Now, therefore, do we therefore say that we don't need any branded generics? I think again, Gauri's presentation is very clear. The problem is a lot of branded, so-called branded generic brands are nothing but generic brands. There is absolutely no value addition. It is identical in every way. And what Gauri pointed out, I think I counted 18 ways you can add value to your brand. Right? It starts with what you put in it, the excipients, or what you take out in it. So are you doing enough, right? Are you doing enough? What kind of quality control are you doing? What kind of packaging are you using? What kind of education of HCPs are you doing? So there are many ways. So I think Gauri hit the nail on the head. The problem is we need value added brands. So if all of us working on branded, one is of course price. A pure generic medicine will cost a little less than branded generics. But in India, even branded generics are highly affordable. I think sometimes when I take some medicines and I look at the price, I can't understand how they can sell it at 5 rupees and 8 rupees. I mean, there are 20 tablets, 8 rupees for it's incredibly, even branded generics in our country are extremely attractively priced. Many of them. I know there are some branded generic products which are highly priced, which, there are always, products like that. But otherwise, I think taking price and hitting every problem with one hammer is not going to work. So from the government side, I think they want to make sure that the patients don't get ripped off by paying extremely high amount of money for a product which is just a generic, acetaminophen or a generic paracetamol or generic ibuprofen, right? But then if I'm selling Brufen, which is a brand of ibuprofen, what am I doing in terms of value addition? What coating I'm going to give to the tablet? Am I going to ensure bioavailability? I've done research to prove bioavailability of my product compared to, a generic ibuprofen made by someone else. What kind of packaging am I doing? Am I spending more money on packaging and therefore ensuring that even a strip of Brufen which is lying in the shelf of the consumer after 1 year is still effective? I'm doing on that, right? So what value addition are we doing in terms of our product formulation, in terms of packaging, in terms of our availability, in terms of educating HCPs, in terms of educating patients? If you don't do any value addition, then I think you deserve to be only selling generic medicine. Then don't call yourself branded generic. You're just a generic one, right? So whenever, Gauri's done a lot of consulting assignments with pharma companies. I've sometimes worked with her on projects. First question we ask is, have you interrogated your brand? How different is your brand from all the other 100 brands available in the market? If it is exactly the same, then you got to think of what you can do. So maybe do something in packaging, or go back to medical department, find some new indication you can talk about, right? I remember when Gauri and I were working on I think 𝘍𝘳, we discovered that certain medicines cause gastric irritation. So can we look at 𝘍𝘳 as a co-prescription for certain types of medicine, right? So it is a new indication, and the doctors actually, instead of telling the medical rep, shut up, I know about 𝘍𝘳, they say, look, can you give me that report? I want to read it, right? That's the response you should get from a doctor for a 50-year-old brand. And you go and tell him something new or tell her something new, and she says, yeah, I want to know more. So I think Gauri's book has all these tips and more, and in perfect fill she has given a lot of indication on how you can move your brand from quote unquote branded generic to a value added branded generic. If you're only a branded generic, then it's a slippery slope. You'll become a generic very soon. But if you move your brand up the chain towards what we call value added branded generic, then you're building your moat and hopefully you'll be able to survive the tsunami. And that's my short answer, Dr. Swati. Back to you.
Thank you, Ambi. The debate here also should be, we are dealing with medicines here which are affecting one's life, one's disease condition. So I would request the panel to take it from that angle also, that we are not comparing with any other industry where it's a different matter. Here it's the matter of health. Prashant, I would like your response to the same question. How can pharmaceutical companies tailor their marketing pricing strategies to make the branded drugs more accessible to different segments of the Indian population?
Thank you, and thanks for hearing the views of Gauri and Ambi here. I would like to look at this from a different lens. I mean, the fact that we're talking about it is that the regulation has pushed us to do this, right? I mean, there's been one NMC that really took the Indian industry by storm in the last 3 weeks, and never has there been such a huge set of negotiations and conversations around a drug topic, which today in 2 weeks' time, all of us have been discussing in the group that by the time we come to our program, there is certainly going to be some announcement, and bang on 2 days back, you've seen that. Now, what I want you to look at is if you look at branded generics. I mean, we're going to be focusing on branded generics here as a small piece, and on top of that, let me add the innovator product, which is probably 10 rupees. I mean, just for our point of discussion, your branded generic space is a highly competitive space, right? Your branded generics can start anywhere from 6 rupees to probably 4 rupees, and in that 6 to 4 rupees, you have a huge set of products which is offered by various sized companies. And then you've got a generic which can be as low as 1 rupee or below 1 rupee, which typically does not have a brand name or a trade name next to it. Now, let's not talk about the generics at the moment, and let's focus on the branded generics. Who are the operating players in branded generics? For India, in the IQVIA data last for a 200 lakh crore market, you've got plenty players. I mean, you have players which are almost as good as more than 500 numbers. 500 manufacturing and marketing, 500 marketing companies are there today that list in that 200 lakh crore annual market. Each of these players have got certain bandwidths there. Now, many of these players in the branded generics, price is not a concern. I think what Ambi says, I really allude to it, is that it's not an expensive market today. And if you look at a lot of Southeast Asian markets, or at least a lot of the SAARC countries, we are extremely competitively priced as compared to any other country in the world. So pricing is not a concern in the branded generics. Now, who's going to take the accountability to a lot of pointers that Gauri put up as to who's going to showcase the increase in, let's say, the awareness of a product or a disease or a management or a diagnosis? It's the branded generic players who actually spend a lot of their amounts to really educate not only doctors from the continuing, let's say, professional education point of view, but also the layman from really understanding how soon can you walk up to a doctor and how soon can you get treated, and with what kind of medications you can get treated. And today, with digitalization coming in, it's the branded generic players that are actually playing the loop here in trying to expand the scope here. So in branded generics, you have a section of players there. You have one section of players who are in the top 100, 150, let's say, organizations in India who are very accountable to the kind of quality that they manufacture. They're very accountable to the kind of promotional, I think, bandwidth that they do to the customers. So they are somebody where you generally have a higher reliance of trust. The ones who are very small, now they typically start getting, I mean, with more than, let's say, 10,000 manufacturing units in India, you can very well guess to that point that Gauri had put up as 0.1% of products are tested. You really do not know from where your products are coming. And if it needs a coating or a specialized formulation, is it really being met or no? It's the smaller end of branded generics player, which are very small in number. They don't have the muscle power to spend on branding. They don't have the muscle power to spend on educating patients or doctors. And hence, they use different models. They use different models of promotion, which is not really justifiable to the kind of healthcare space that we are in. So if you look at branded generics per se, today, from a price point of view, I think you're very fairly priced and very, very fairly competitive, number one. Number two, there are different segments in the branded generics run by different companies who really invest back into the market purely to establish their therapy leadership, their brand leadership, their company leadership in different formats. It's the lower end of branded generics, which today may not be adopting to those methods because they are more in for the quick run compared to the long run. That's my assessment from looking only from the branded generic space.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you for mentioning and clearing the spectrum. This is very valid that is the segment where the problem lies along with the quality. But yes, one defaulter and the whole system will go for a toss.
Yep.
So let me put this question to Ambi here. Are there limits to what branded generics can or cannot do, Ambi?
Well, I think what we spoke about earlier is that a branded generic can do a lot of what we call incremental innovation across the whole spectrum. Okay, that is something legitimate. You can do, innovation across the whole spectrum of your formulation, your packaging, your carton pack, etc., etc. That's a something you can do. Second, a branded generic, like what I think Prashant very clearly mentioned, can invest in educating the medical profession, right? Which is something they're already doing. The good side effect of the COVID pandemic is that a lot of doctors are now ready to listen to webinars. I know some doctors who earmark on every Sunday 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. is when they listen to webinars, because they've made it a part of the calendar, which was unthinkable 5 years ago. So some pharma companies are focused on this. They offer, global experts to come and speak. So it's a great service which, so-called branded generic marketers are today providing. The problem is the last mile, where what you cannot do, which is things like, what I think Prashant alluded to. What are you doing with the doctor? What are you doing with the chemist? The bonus offer, the schemes, etc., etc. Then it's a slippery slope. Then if you're only selling your branded generic based on, incentivizing doctors to prescribe it or incentivizing chemists to dispense it, then you should be banned. You should not be allowed to sell a branded generic, and you should be told you will call it paracetamol and you should sell it as paracetamol. Right? Then I think you don't have the right. You see, the moment you put a brand, that also puts in a certain amount of responsibility on you. Why are you a brand? Why should I, as a consumer, pay a premium, like what Prashant rightly said, when I can get a generic product for 2 rupees? Why should I pay 4 rupees for you? It may be small, the amount may be small, but why should I pay that 4 rupees? What are you doing for that? If you can't defend it, then I'm sorry, you don't deserve the title. Then don't fool yourself. You're not doing branded generic marketing. You're doing generic marketing, and you're hiding under the cloak of branded generic, and you're incentivizing the trade, you're incentivizing the medical profession. And that is the problem. The problem is there is, pharma industry per se has not, got enough positive goodwill going around on what they are doing for helping, the fact that you are improving the competencies of doctors, you are teaching them about new medicines, you're teaching them about using new techniques. Gauri has worked with Johnson & Johnson on their, sutures business, where, what are they doing to help doctors use better suturing methods. The pharma industry doing a lot of good stuff. Okay, but unfortunately, they always get a short end of the stick saying you guys are charging a premium. When a paracetamol costs 1 rupee, generic paracetamol, why should I pay 2 rupees for it? You're price gouging the consumer. But the fact is, the 1 rupee paracetamol could be made by the 9,999th factory, which Prashant was mentioning, which has very little supervision, very little control, and you don't know whether what is the bioavailability. I mean, I'm reading something in the yesterday in the editorial in one of the leading newspapers about the whole problem bioavailability. Who's checking for bioavailability? You know, and you find something of poor quality, you shut that factory down, and that factory anyway is very small. It's about to be shut anyway. So what are you going to do? I mean, the whole problem which we are facing with export of our, cough syrup, which has given us such a bad name, right? So there are definitely things, if you're a branded generic, you can do, and there are things you can't. Back to you.
Thank you, Ambi and Prashant. You have both put forth all the relevant points here. Value addition is the key, and if you are not doing that, more and more regulations are going to be forced upon us. So, yes, the update was there that they have been, the NMC guidelines have been put on hold, and we are waiting till further notice. But looking at the ways and looking at the activism from the government, they are taking it pro bono, I think. So what will happen? I'm asking this question to Gauri Chaudhary. The NMC has put the order on hold, but if they decide to implement it, not in this manner or in some other manner, but still the points will hold, I think, what will happen? What will happen, Gauri, if this comes?
Yeah. So Dr. Swati, in my opinion, and I'm saying this while there are two experts on brands here on this panel, but in my opinion, branding is not going to go anywhere else. Brand is here to stay. So even if you are selling generics, the brand building will become extremely important. Now, what are you building in that case? You're building the corporate brands. Doctors may not write it on the piece of paper, but they will tell customers that buy this XYZ medicine of this company. The corporate branding probably would be required to tell the patients that, look, we provide, so we take the responsibility of quality. And if you're going for generic, ask for, say, Abbott's or, Cipla's or, whichever smaller company, I mean, depending on that company's branding initiatives. But there is no shying away from branding because world has moved from commodities to brand. And when it comes to healthcare, there is no chance that people would go back. Even lowest in the economic strata, the aspiration of any person is to get the best education and the best health. And that's why their children don't go to public schools, they go to private schools. So should NMC implement this? Trust me, my strong feeling is that corporate branding will become more and more important. And all brand managers would need to learn branding once again. I mean, I would love to hear from others, but this is my strong feeling.
Branding is here to remain, and marketing teams and the right promotions are not going to stop. Okay, so now coming to patient's perspective, we have limited time in this session, so I'll quickly maneuver the questions which are important for all of us to know. Prashant, I'd ask this question to you about the patient education, because ultimately, whatever happens with pharma or the doctors, patient is the receiver of the services of the healthcare system. They are affected the most, whether their pockets or whether their health, whether their economic status, or even their caregivers. All of them are affected by any decision the government makes. Patient education is crucial in ensuring that they are making informed decisions about their healthcare. Given the population of India, how can pharmaceutical companies contribute to educating Indian patients about the benefits and value of using specific branded drugs?
Thanks. And I think very important, a few of the sliders that, Gauri showed about the patient centricity. I mean, if I have to really put my neck out here and, I think compliment the pharma industry for the kind of patient education done over the last 2 decades. If there is any patient education that happened at a mass level, I think pharma branded generic players along with innovators, have had a huge say. Look at how the last 2 decades have moved in the industry. In the last 2 decades, you've had a lot of companies getting their foot into specific therapy areas. And when I say that I want to become big in respiratory, I want to become big in let's say cardiology, in diabetes, in oncology, each of these companies in the last 2 decades that have started having a fair share of a therapy in terms of category leadership have only gone about by doing 2 big things. One is educating doctors more and more about it, doctors who are super specialists to specialists, and in a few places where the management happens right at the primary level, also to the generalist. It has also happened to the patient level. So right from doing the hard yards of patient education camps, and I'm sure a lot of people here in the panel and as well as the people in the audience would say it's a lot more nerve-wracking to do a patient camp than to do a doctor meeting. It takes the sweat out to organize a patient camp. A lot of patient education camps have happened in the physical form in the last number of years. Now, in the last 5 years, there's a lot of digitalization that's coming. COVID gave you that spark. You've had chatbots, you've had online apps. I think the app that even Gauri showed towards the end, the chatbots that are open. You've got companies that are today setting up digital companies. So patient education will remain a very, very key center for pharma. Branded generics have a lot of responsibility to play here. And if you want to really stand out in the market, if you want to be in the upper section of the branded generic, you've got to invest in patient education as one of your front runners to understand as a patient, what are you? Because you see, what is the journey of patients? You have a patient who has a problem, walks into a doctor, the doctor diagnoses and the doctor prescribes, and he prescribes a brand. So the trust is between the patient and the doctor. And as a pharma company, if you don't realize these 2 avenues of trust and be a part of it, you are out of the race. So companies who have invested in getting the trust of the patient and the doctor have added value as a patient education channel. And I think they have benefited immensely. So it has been there quite actively, and probably with the new NMC that might take some shape, I think this will only get more aggressive and thankfully better.
Thanks, Prashant. Also, I'll just ask the audience here, we all have our mobiles, 1 or even 2 mobiles with us. How many of them are health apps? That's my question. You have Mintras, Flipkarts, Amazons, everything to do with your daily life. But where is your health? Where has pharma missed the bus in getting into the minds of people? The importance of it, the trust building, where is it? So that is one question I will put directly to the audience here. You have family members, you have people around you. Ask them, name 2 good companies in pharma whose medicines you will take. And believe me, 90% of them would not be able to take the names of 2 companies. 90% of them would. So, Gyan, thank you. You're calling a bit, but still, that's a genuine question, I think, that goes out to the pharma industries. Building trust and building brands is the key. And government giving a jolt to the industry was, I don't know, was it required, not required, but it has rightly initiated the debate, which had to be there, I think, even 10 years or 20 years back when the practices were made. Next question to Mr. Ambi. What can pharma brands learn from other sectors? You have worked in advertising, you have worked for a lot of big brands, Ambi. So give us some learnings that we can.
Okay, I can go on and on, but we are tight on time. But I feel, I was a brand manager in 1980, 81 to 87. I was a brand manager, and what did we use? Medical reps and visual aids and samples. If you go to pharma companies today, what are they using? Medical rep, visual aid and samples. How do you set up a new division? You hire 200 medical reps, 80 field managers, give them visual aid, give them samples. Now, that's a very old antediluvian way of marketing, which most pharma companies are stuck in that, right? During COVID, I thought there'll be a big transition, that we will start technology and digitalization coming in a big way into pharma. I don't think that has happened. I think there's a lot more that can be done in terms of new ways of communicating with doctors. Why should it always be a medical rep standing outside a doctor chamber with a visual aid? who's given literally 5 seconds to the okay, go. I mean, but it's seen as important. So every company now says, I'm going to hire 3,000 medical reps and 5,000 medical reps, etc., etc. That's something which should be questioned. And there can be, probably the industry can learn from other industries, like whether it is stockbroking or whether it is FMCG or whether it is automobiles or whether it is banking. There are so many different things happening. I somehow feel the pharma industry is very heavily ingrown. It's still very, very heavily ingrown. I don't think there's enough fresh wind blowing through the pharma industry. And I think they can learn a lot from other industries and try more things. It may fail, like the use of mass media. Suddenly, pharma industry, I remember, I think when vaccines were introduced, I think, I forget, SKF, I think, did a phenomenal campaign in newspapers about vaccine. So did, I think, Torrent, right? So these are companies who have used newspapers to communicate to doctors about generic benefits of doctors and of course patients, right? Where is it today? Today, pharma industry has unfortunately taken some of the bad habits of other industries. So they use celebrities today to sell all kinds of products. So they have whatever big film star or sports person standing and saying, things like that. But they've not absorbed the other things. You can do a lot more, right? And I don't think the pharma industry is willing to take risks with it. It's very easy to say, okay, I'll have 100 more reps. I know how much it will cost me, and per rep, when I put a rep, I know how much sales I will get. It's so easy to calculate. Versus if I go and tell a pharma company, you have a 100 crore brand, take 5 crores and try something on mass media. They will balk. They, oh no. We don't know. 5 crores is a lot of money. It may not work. Yeah, it may not work. But if you don't try it, you never know what will work for you, for your product, for your category, for your patient, for your doctors. So I think they can learn a lot. And I think we are still caught in poor late, Tarun Gupta's method of visual aid and bell ringing and stuff like that. I think we can do a lot more. We've got a lot of bright people here. Only thing is, they have to take the risk to push it with their senior management, saying, I want to try this, and it may fail. Is it okay? And there are enough good ideas have to bubble up to senior management, and then the senior manager can take a call, saying, okay, we'll give you 5 crores extra. Try this. Right? I don't think enough of that is happening today. Thank you. Back to you.
Thanks, Ambi, for vehemently putting it. We will open up within the next 4 minutes the question answer sessions. So I'll skip one question, Gauri, since you have already answered the questions around value addition and all. I'll put this question to both of you then, Prashant and Gauri. How can we ensure that generic drugs are of the same quality as branded drugs? This is coming up in our questions list also. What is the future of generic drugs in India? And what are the ethical implications? This is the main question. Ethical implications of doctors prescribing branded drugs when generic alternatives are available. So Prashant, first you, then
sure.
I'd request Gauri to go. Yeah.
Nice. So I would also second what Gauri put the last slide, which is, the era is for both to coexist. The era is for both to coexist. And when I was trying to just go through some math and just look at it, the number of people who are India's got basically broad 3 levels of medical treatment system. You've got a primary, which has got some sub-health centers. You've got some primary healthcare centers. There are close to 2 lakh primary healthcare centers in India. Now that's a huge number. The minute it comes to the secondary, now you are coming to now district levels. So from a primary level, which is, what's a primary level? They are anything for population, from 3,000 to 30,000. That's what the primary level caters to across the length and breadth of India. You come down to the secondary level and you go into a few lakhs, which are the district levels. You've got the district hospitals and you've got the community healthcare centers. And then you come to tertiary, which are very typically your medical colleges and the whole metro system, the whole urban system that is there. Now, if you start looking at only to start with for the next 5 years, if you can start looking at how do you strengthen the primary centers? How do you strengthen the primary centers with quality generics? Because these are places where the pharmaceutical organizations don't reach out to a great level. They are all surrounded in the class 1, 2, 3, 4 towns, and that's it. I mean, at the most, they're 5 and 6. They're never down to the bottom. That's a huge area which I see a great space for generics to be driven by government with proper quality checks in place to actually filter to those sets of patients. If those guys can get the kind of quality generic medicine, you don't have generic medicines really buying into a slot which is a lot more higher, because their price matters, medicine accessibility matters, quality matters at all points of time. So can you start putting in place manufacturing systems that undergo GMP certification and are strictly monitored? Because today in India, the first 4 years of any new product is the most fertile period in terms of quality testing. Any brand that needs to be launched in the first 4 years undergoes not only a chemical entity validation, it also undergoes a bioequivalence validation by the DCGI. The minute you cross the 4th year, the state FDAs have got all the authority to approve a drug to get into the market with pure chemical entity validations. There is no bioequivalence needed or bioavailability needed. Now that's where quality starts getting dissipated. Can you start having checks and balances there? And when you start having checks and balances, you will start serving a larger population with quality. And then these regulations, I'm glad it came up because it just brings to the front area the whole focus and the importance of why quality is so important, why coexistence is so important. And let's not blame the entire branded generics in the same space. Who can write branded generics? It's only your registered medical practitioners, which are modern medicine practitioners. You have equal number of Ayush doctors in the country, whom we call non-MBBS or non specialists. What are they doing? So the generics reach out to them, and the generics, the pure play generics reached out to them. Price matters. Quality is subject to one's guess and one's luck. They are using that left, right, center. So bring in regulations that will help. My take is the next 5 years, focus on these levels, get the quality checks in terms of manufacturing done at state FDA levels. And I think we will start seeing a much healthier, quality-driven India.
Thanks, Prashant. Gauri, this question again to you.
Yeah, so Prashant beautifully explained the quality aspect. Let me take the remaining part of your question about unethical practices. Now, that's a huge, huge issue. And that has to stop. And there is no dispute on that. It has to stop. Now, if it has to stop, I mean, I always have an equivalence. Like we know that there are crimes happen against women in certain cities or large part of India. Do we stop women from going out? Do we ban women ban women's entry in the public spaces? No, we have better police system. How can we ban branded generics? Because some people from every aspect of healthcare ecosystem are abusing this. So the answer is very strong UCPMP. There is no dispute about it. But strengthening it and criminalizing it is absolutely necessary to stop these practices, because all of us have to look at fair play and absolute morality has to be intact. So the answer is strengthen law, punish those who are doing these kind of things.
And I would second that, because it's a life-saving matter. It's your health, it's drugs, it's a patient in dire need of medicine. It's a matter of life and death. So thank you, Gauri, Prashant, and Ambi for taking us through this session. This topic is, I can't even think of an adjective, what can I say? But it needs, a lot of time for discussions. There are many dignitaries from pharma also, industry also, who have joined these sessions and are raring to ask questions to the panel or even add to the points that the panel has discussed. Before opening the panel directly for interaction, let me put a simple question to the panel asked. There are a lot of questions, but I'm taking 2 of them and then opening the panel, given the time limits. So one question has come from Mr. Girdhar, that a company is selling some drug, let us say for 10 tablets, they are charging ₹500, whereas in Jan Aushadhi centers, it is available at ₹150 for 10 tablets. That's a huge price difference. Let us assume the scenario. How do you justify such huge cost difference? Doesn't it give that give an indication that the generic is inferior, or what value addition has been done of raising the cost from 150 to 500? So the question is open for any panel member to answer.
I think I'll just add, and Ambi or Gauri can add to it. We addressed this some time back. I mean, we don't know the sources of the company, so I think it's very unfair for me to even comment on 500 versus 150. But if you look at the entire thing, I mean, 150 very purely, 𝘍𝘪𝘨𝘩𝘵 𝐻𝐸𝐺 Bharat talks about generic products, right? So we know that these are companies where they don't really need to invest in any marketing activities to really do some doctor programs or patient awareness programs or anything to do with increasing of disease awareness, versus a 500 rupee brand, which I believe is a branded generic or an innovator. I don't have that information, but it's
a branded generic, Prashant. Branded generic. That's
great. So if it's a branded generic, that company has the responsibility to really talk and vouch for the kind of quality and the services that it provides. Tomorrow something goes wrong with a 150 rupee product, you don't know who's next to catch, versus a 500 rupee, you exactly know whom to go and ask and raise a hue and a cry and get serviced for that kind of a service. So it's like an identified agent versus a non-identified agent. I mean, that's a very simplistic way to really showcase what he tried to ask.
Yeah, I know, just to add to what Prashant said, obviously the same company cannot be selling one product to Jan Aushadhi and the same product at 3 times the price in the open market. Okay, some variation can be there, but if you're putting your company name, let's say a reputed company name, and selling it at 150 rupees in a generic Jan Aushadhi outlet and charging 500 rupees in the other outlet, then your chemist will go and buy from Jan Aushadhi and sell it. Right? He'll say that this is the same company ka hai, ye le lo. Right? So chemist is not a fool. He'll go buy it 150 rupees. So if you're playing in the branded generics market, then if you also want to play in the pure generics market, then your delta, you have to be very careful. What can be the delta? Can the delta be 5%, 10%, 15%, or can it be 100%? If it is 100%, there should be enough reasons why your branded generic is so much better than your generic.
Thank you, Ambi. These two are valid answers, I think, and the question has been answered. One question I'll take: why not government seal a fixed MRP for any drug across all companies in India? This has been coming up time and again, that fix the MRP of the drugs. What are the implications, Gauri ma'am, Prashant and Ambi, if they are going to do so?
I personally feel that market should be less and less governed by agencies, external regulatory agencies, and the market should be able to play fair market game. So that's my personal belief. The competitive forces would bring prices under control. Having said that, we do have NLEM, we have drug price control, and we have essential drugs included in it. If government thinks it fit, they can always expand the list or they can shrink it, but the law exists. And I'm sure there are some reasons why government has not done it, because in the end, when you take away money from the industry, we all as a nation stand to suffer. So it might not be just wise to just wipe off certain crores from this industry and expect either the industry do well or the country to do well, because it's all does get contributed in some or the other way. But having said that, nothing should stop government if they think that certain prices are not fair. They can bring regulations, they can expand NLEM list. That's my argument.
I just second what Gauri said. I mean, there is a lot that the government is doing, and the government is on watch for this. I think almost every second year nowadays we are getting a revised list, and there are prices that is coming under it. And let's also face it that the industry is so competitive, it is so fragmented that there is no way that a good company that wants to make a significant presence in the industry can actually blink an eye on the price. I mean, the price is such an integral factor that it is normally inculcated into the entire system. So having a price for every product fixed by the regulatory is definitely not a wise idea. Fix the quality. I think the rest will follow.
Thank you, Prashant and Gauri. One question is, isn't for the patients today saving money the biggest value addition? I think the premise is flawed. What you are saying that saving money is the biggest value addition to a patient's life. Any take on this comment?
I think what Prashant said is right. It's do you want price or do you want life? You decide. Will you go and risk your life by taking a generic product made by a no-name company? It's your life. It's not price. It's not a question of only price. It's a question of life.
So, Ambi, the question from a patient perspective also is there that today you give a sale, or you announce a sale, you discount the price, people make a beeline. So pharma companies can justify this statement then that we are saving money for you, we are giving you, generic drugs. That can be a premise for value addition.
No, generic drug is fine, but who's going to ensure quality? If you can ensure quality, then, very good, do generic, right?
Thanks, Ambi.
Quality and education and support, do all that. I'm sure the price will always be factored in somewhere. Yeah. Nothing is free, right? We all know nothing is free.
So
absolutely. We in India, I think our price of our medicines are not all that high. If you go and try, buying anything in developed countries, how affordable our medicines are already. And it's actually amazing how pharma companies are profitable after selling, products at such a low price. I think their profits really come from scale. The scale of the Indian pharma industry is not fully appreciated. It's really economies of scale which is really helping them in terms of, making sure the margin. Indian pharma industry is profitable, very profitable. But that they're profitable because I think of many reasons, not just because they're charging an absurd price for branded generics.
Thank you, Ambi. You may be seeing me smiling because there's a question coming up. It gives you a smile when you read it. What will be the impact of NMC guidelines if they are coming like the same on the career of brand managers and sales managers? They are worried about.
I think Gauri has answered it. Gauri has answered it very well. Your job will be to build your corporate brand, right? And your job will be to make sure the doctor whispers into the patient's ears, paracetamol le lo, but ye GSK ka le lo. So amoxiclav le lo, GSK ka le lo. Yeah, ye ibuprofen le lo, again Abbott ka le lo. Right? वो आना पड़ेगा. Because the problem is L1. You see, this whole problem of pricing is this whole L1 mentality which exists in public sector undertaking. And we've been part of that, participating in government bids for things, right? It always goes to the L1. But in the advertising sector, they managed to fix it by saying, look, it's not only L1. We will only call agencies who are rated among the top 10 in the country based on certain rating reports, or agencies which have a credible, have to submit your balance sheet. And therefore, so, if those things are done, which means ensuring quality, then you're okay. Then it's a win-win.
One last question I'll take, because this question I have in my mind also, and I received it from many people. If the NMC guidelines come in the same format or a bit tinkered, won't it give huge power to the chemists? And what are the implications?
So again, I guess this question got answered that yes, it will give certain amount of power to chemists, but that is in a very theoretical format. I think somewhere people are going to go for brands and so first of all, if NMC comes with this kind of guidelines, they will have to come with their OTC guidelines. In this country, OTC definition is still not clear. We don't have OTC guidelines. So certain brands are going to simply move, or certain categories of medicines are simply going to move into OTC, and there'll be huge branding happening there. and patients will call by those medicines. And for the rest, which are prescription medicines, the patients will, so the pharma companies will have to do TV advertising or mass media advertising of their corporate brands, because in the end, it's not everyone is looking for sasta medicine. We have to get it right. There are people are going to invest into their medicines, and the corporate brands, corporate branding has to tell them, buy my company's medicines. And for that, those generics will be expensive. Let's be very clear that everyone is not going to sell generic at the same cost. There will be expensive generics, and people will buy them because the company builds the brand, the corporate brand, in such a manner that people will start trusting those particular medicines. So paracetamol of GSK, like Ambi said, or amoxicillin, clavulanic acid of another company, whatever, that will be, people will ask for it. And doctors may not write it, but they'll obviously say, सिप्ला का मांगो, या फिर they'll say and tell the chemist कि मेरा patient आएगा तो बस यही company का देना. Because in the end, everyone has to trust the medicine, and it's only the brands that bring trust. Commodities do not bring trust. So that's I think, the basic of everything.
Thank you, Gauri ma'am. And I think there are a lot of debate what is going to happen in the future. If a doctor is whispering the brands, then there could be government regulations on putting up I don't know what.
Recording of conversations that are happening. But I think everyone should look at it as a basic human necessity. Because when the world is moving towards brand, they move towards brand for a reason. And when I say people, it includes doctors, it includes patients, the caregivers, and everyone. So you can't simply one day take away brands from the system and believe that everything is going to be fine. Brands are going
just to add to that, add to what Gauri is saying, in certain countries, the healthcare system is differently organized. Our healthcare system is, it's differently organized. You have patients who are less educated. You have chemists all over the place. And like I think Prashant said, the chokra there can be dispensing anything. A lot of our doctors coming out of some of our, medical colleges, we also need, simplified guides on all this kind of thing, which is why I think branded generics have a role in India. I understand where the government is coming from. They want to reduce the price burden on the poor consumer. And I think Prashant has given a very good suggestion that maybe they should start maybe they already implemented it, that primary health centers will only dispense generic medicines from reputed companies so that they are good quality, right? And then you ladder it up.
And one more thing, Swati, to add to what both of them said, the government, in case there is going to be very little tinkering, we are talking of a very speculative situation. It's an equal mandate on the government to start having a lot more tougher laws at the dispensing areas, which means all the chemists today, if you look at more than 10 lakh odd retail outlets supply to the Indian industry, and you have an average of 3 to 4 people per store, you're talking of somewhere between 30 and 50 lakh of people that needs to comply with the norms of what the government is. Are they qualified enough in dispensing? And you don't have so many pharmacists, right? There's one pharmacist with 3 stores and he's not there anywhere. He's less a pharmacist and more a businessman. So the whole idea is there are a lot of things that needs to step up. Like I think Gauri said, allow pharmaceuticals to start getting into the media. Let them not, of course, promote drug, but let them promote concepts and therapies and companies. A lot will change. It's not just the whole idea of the power going to the chemist. There is a lot more that you have to do. So, you're just inviting more trouble than getting into some basic sanity level work.
Thank you, Prashant, for adding to this. Thank you, Ambi, and thank you, Gauri. I'll open up the session for one-to-one discussions. I'll request you all to please stay there for 10-15 minutes more. We can take 2 or 3 questions or comments from our audience also. There are a lot of raised hands. One request to all those who are raising hands, please take your name first, keep the question relevant to the discussion, and in short, put your questions to the panel. And before that, to continue the discussions on NMC guidelines and its implications, we have on 3rd September 2 batches running with the Supreme Court Advocate, Mr. Mahendra Bajpayee, talking on the topic of NMC guidelines for pharma industry. You are invited to join those 2 sessions. First is full, so you are invited to join the second batch at 3 p.m. Happening on 3rd September, next Sunday. And also requesting everyone to be there with PharmaState Academy in Mumbai on 28th October. Our live event is coming for pharma marketing, talking about the now and next topics for the pharmaceutical industry in science, tech, and digital. So we are holding this event on 28th October in Mumbai. We are requesting you to join us to listen to expert panels, have the right discussions, and move towards the greater good for the pharmaceutical industry. Opening up the session, Dr. Satish, if we can allow people to unmute and put forth their questions.
Yeah, Reshma.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. My name is Srinivas. So I've been working in the pharma industry for almost 3 decades in the sales and marketing. And initially started with an MNC. So there we are like promoting only the research brands. So one particular brand was in the antifungal segment. So the every visit we used to have so much of information to share with the doctors, and we used to have a fruitful discussion with the doctors. And because of price difference, there was a Indian MNC which came out with three different divisions in the derma segment. And all these three divisions had the same molecule. They were sourcing from the same vendor, but selling at 3 different rates. So then what happened was, because of price difference, we lost the market share. So now what is the present status is that this MNC, we have closed the operations, and now there are doctors who are asking for the parent brand, which is very difficult to get. Now patient is at the loss. So this is what happens if the innovator companies are not being encouraged by the government.
Okay, so you have put forth a situation which has hampered the value addition.
That was more a comment than a question.
Yes, yes.
So don't need to answer that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Amit, if you can unmute and yeah.
Hello, hi. Am I audible?
Yes.
To begin with, a very personal message to Prashant. Hi.
Hi.
We have worked together a lot, and good to see you. I'll keep this short. There were a lot of comments that I wanted to make, but I'll just stick to one part which has not been brought up by the panel here. It has not been brought up by the government agencies. It has not been brought up by the IMA. And that is the most relevant than anything else that we have ever discussed here. Okay, price is not the issue. The real issue is, Prashant almost brought it up with regard to the quality. What is the criteria of quality? Some chemical pharmacopoeial tests plus a bioequivalence for a certain period of time. After that, you are scot-free. Even bioequivalence is not a benchmark. Indian regulators refuse to admit that because US FDA uses it. But US FDA is also wrong. Every pharmacologist who says that BABE implies an equivalent product is wrong. Reason is simple. Bioequivalence only measures the concentration in the blood. It does not measure the efficacy. And that is why clinical trials exist. I'm not saying every branded generic or every generic should do a clinical trial, but there has to be a clinical proof. And it is on the, now I come to the second point. First was criteria for quality. It is not BABE and pharmacopoeial test. It is clinical efficacy. The second point, it is not the government, it is not the pharma industry, it is not the chemists, the retailers and all. They are only a support system for the healthcare. They do not constitute the healthcare system. The healthcare system primarily has 2 components, doctor and patient. The choice of the medicine is made by the doctor. And there are a number of examples I will not name, but one generic we talked about, enoxiclav. There are various brands. I have had to switch the brand because that did not work, but augmentin worked. The same example for pantoprazole. There are examples for ranitidine. All these things. So even in branded generics from reputed companies, top 10 companies, sometimes the product fails and some other company's product works. So just because you have a top 10, top 50 company or whatever benchmark you want to use does not mean that every brand of that company is trustworthy. Please keep that in mind. I know product managers and company owners will not like my statement, but that's the reality. Okay, so that is the other point. Doctors very often leave a brand because they do not find adequate efficacy. And last point is about the patient. Please don't forget about the patient's side. There is very important for patient compliance to be there for the efficacy to happen ultimately. And the patients get familiar, comfortable with a particular brand, the look, the feel, the taste, the flavor, whatever it is. There may not be medical criteria, but the patient is comfortable and he goes to the chemist and says, "Mujhe ye brand chahiye." The sales force has no hold over that. The chemist has no hold over that. The marketing has no hold over that. The medical has no hold over that. So the patient reality has to be kept in mind. If he does not get that brand, he might just stop. This has happened a number of times in my practice. So please keep in mind that there's much more to this NMC thing. It is not just the cheaper drugs and all. I mean, what the whole thing got triggered by the PM office, and they're absolutely right. Affordability is important, but affordability at the cost of quality is definitely not on. And all the examples that the panel gave about people accusing us of, fleecing them and conning them, those people are absurd. I don't subscribe to that at all. The pharma companies do not cheat public. Let us be very clear on that. Let us raise our heads and march ahead. And anybody who has any doubt on that is welcome to go around shouting, black and blue. So
Thank you, Dr.
please
Amit.
remember criteria for quality, doctor's choice, and the patient's choice. These three have to be addressed, and that is what one person in IMA did, and I'm glad he did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amit, for your comments. Requesting those who are raising hands, please ask the questions if any. And comments are all welcome. Please write them in the chat box. I would request you to put your questions to the panel members.
Thank you, Dr. Swati, for arranging this. And my question is, actually, this is the first question. The last two were not questions. I'm asking that what made this government to abandon the these guidelines overnight? Why this decision was recoiled? And please, I want some solid answer, if you can, Ambi sir or Prashant sir or Gauri ma'am, not a goal answer, but real answer. Yeah.
Okay, real answer, you have to ask the PMO. Okay, answer ho gaya.
Vivek, I'll just share with you something that I heard from one of the doctors on a panel recently, and he was absolutely very critical of the NMC. Okay, the NMC is not an elected body but a nominated body. So obviously there's a lot of stake that goes on there. And a very interesting comment that came up is, in this year itself, there were 6 different comments or 6 different regulations that came in from the NMC, all of them revoked. So there is a huge question mark on the way the NMC goes about its act together. And what has been their intent and their logic? Definitely there's a governmental push or a governmental nod on the whole process. But I think as all of us being absolutely non-regulatory people, we may not have an insight into why they really recalled something back so quickly. The fact is, why did they put it without a lot of homework? There was a draft sent in 2022 to everybody. There was a lot of comments that came in, but those comments were not taken into consideration. And yet they went ahead and launched something like this, and we all know the backlash that happened. So that's the only gist that I can give you, Vivek, if that helps you a little.
So Vivek, there are 2 answers. One is directly ask the PMO, but all the talks that are going on around this guidelines, putting them up suddenly, then retracting them, and then I don't know whether tomorrow they come up with a different version. the discussions have to go on, and I think we shall have to discuss each and every point where here, due to paucity of time, we will not be able to take up.
No
I'll
problem.
take up the
First answer, I am not agreeing, but second answer is still it's okay.
okay, thanks, Vivek. So these, we all are in some sort of mental space where we are not currently comfortable with NMC doing whatever it is doing. So these things will flare up sometimes, and these actually make the session interesting. So thank you, Ambi and Vivek. Nikhil, over to you to ask the question. Please ask the question if any. Yeah, unmute. Yeah.
Very good afternoon to the panel. The insights has been great. My only question is that to the great pharma industry, as told by Prashant sir, I think evaluation training to all the new doctors of crop of doctors who are coming into the system needs to be trained in a systematic way in the terms of prescription pattern for the new doctors. And that is what I feel. Apart from that, Prashant sir has given this 3 insights: tier 5, tier 6, and tier 7. That is where the pharma companies lies in next 5 years. That is what I understand. And that complete education program is what pharma companies has to, with private participation and the government participation mutually. If this can be done, then the India can be a big, already we are called as world pharma giants, but still things are to be shown on the right track. That is what my understanding goes. Your insights, Prashant sir. Over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I don't know. I mean, you had a lot of comment as well as a question, so I'm just trying to decipher that. You're right, Nikhil. The pharma will do it, and I'm sure the next session is a lot to do with the kind of promotional activities that pharma can support. Pharma is already doing it. Pharma will need to step up a lot more in trying to have doctor education program. When we were doing a lot of this, just on the lighter side, somebody had raised a very, very interesting question to us. डॉक्टरों को सिखाने का ठेका फार्मा ले रखा है क्या, was a question that came up. And because the amount of CMEs that pharma companies were doing, it looked like the poor guy did not study for the last 8 years. So we go and train him as though he's never been trained before. So there is going to be moderation. There's going to be transparency in the entire approach. There is going to be a lot of need-based kind of activities that pharma will get in, whether it's in coordination with association, in coordination with international bodies, that is left to be seen. But yes, I think the education part, which is the continuing professional development part, will be something that pharma will take up.
Education and training is the best way of growing the intellectual capex of all the small-time B Pharmacy or BSc graduates joining the great pharma industry. That is what, and training plays a vital role in enhancing his capability and capacity, as told by Gauri Madam, initial part. Thank to you. The session has been wonderful. Thanks very much, Swati Madam, to you for organizing this. Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikhil. And PharmaState Academy is here to do the training and upskilling part. We have been there just now. We have closed another parallel session held for students on regulatory affairs. So that thing, we have taken it up on our platform also. Thank you, Nikhil, and thank you, Prashant, for answering. Can take up one more question, Ambi, Gauri, and Prashant, with your permission, and then close the session for today. We will open it for
Mr. Mohammed Nasir.
Yes. Please ask the question.
Good afternoon, Swati ma'am. Thanks for organizing such a wonderful session. Delighted to attend it. So for mediocre companies who are private limited, just incorporated within 4 to 5 years, they are maintaining good quality checkup. So apart from certificate of analysis from the manufacturer, what are the things which we need to take care? So can you address, means to check out the quality? For each batch, we are getting certificate of analysis. So any other parameters or any other suggestions by which we can check the quality of the product?
Nasir, I think we are not competent to really give you the manufacturing GMP standards, but there are bodies, there are regulatory authorities that do it. And rather than calling it a mediocre company, I think you might want to say it's a medium-sized company. We don't like mediocrity, I'm sure. So check out. There are a lot of GMP norms that are there in the site. Maybe they will help. PharmaState has a lot of such activities that is related to manufacturing. Maybe you and your company can get some leads there.
Prashant, yes, Nasir, we are starting this pharma manufacturing quality sessions also. in collaboration with the good agency. So we'll update you there. Thank you for asking the question. So since this wasn't a relevant question, I'll take up one more from Mr. Abhishek Kumar and close the session. Abhishek, if you can unmute. Okay, we'll move to Dr. Sanjeev, if you can unmute and ask the question.
Hello, good afternoon, all. I'm Dr. Sanjeev Gupta, Associate Professor of Pharmacology. I just want to ask about, can you throw some light on 𝘍𝘳𝐰𝐽 medicines? Whether BED studies, bioavailability, bioequivalence studies have been done, or what about the quality of 𝘍𝘳𝐽 medicines, which are available throughout the India?
Again, Dr. Sanjeev, I think the panel here would not be delving into this 𝘍𝘳𝐽 quality thing. It's a separate topic altogether. So let us close the session today. Otherwise, the questions and the comments will keep on coming. We will be
take the last question.
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay.
𝐼𝐬𝐳.
Okay, so on Satish request, it's from Mr. 𝐼𝐬𝐳. Yeah.
Yeah, very good afternoon to all, Swati, Ambi, Gauri, and my dear Prashant. Okay, and it's really nice to see you all after a long time. I think generics as well as branded is really a big fight for many times. In fact, Mr. Prashant may be knowing or witnessed that in Ranbaxy we had a big generic division, and that was actually we were number one generic company in Ranbaxy with the in IPM. And also we have very strong brands. There's always in the board, we always have a conflict, and we have that, like there is a kind of cannibalization takes place, and that story still continue today. I think Prashant hasn't really highlighted one interesting thing is where actually that conflict can be avoided, like the way where we can go to tier 3, 4, 5 and rural, we can strengthen that. Now the question is, like today we do a lot of CMEs and other things. Would it be giving an opportunity to make the CMEs for village or the kind of rural healthcare centers where the companies, actually generic companies, they can focus and do that, even though generic companies, they never do any CMEs or anything, or they do something different. Probably will not give a kind of big opportunity for them to focus and do that, probably which will help a big opportunity for the generics into focusing the smaller areas or villages and the kind of places, and that kind of activity will give some space for them to do some scientific activities. Probably today what happens, CME, as you are telling that today we don't find a solid subject or content for a CMEs today. We have been many times we have been repeated, our doctors are now not interested. So if we can do this, what kind of orientation we need to bring for them, and what kind of things should be planned for them? I hope I'm able to present it.
Yeah, so I would like to just answer this question just in one line, is that the NMC has also come out with regulations stating that, these pharma-sponsored CMEs should not happen, and doctors should not be attending them. So there is also a lot happening in that area. So I don't know. So maybe this question is more to Prashant. So Prashant, you can answer. But there is a lot of suspicion even around these CMEs. So if we hear about, if we see the reversal of this branded generic thing happening, same probably would happen with CME.
Yeah, though I think there's been a slight notification amendment on the CPD being allowed. It is yet to be clear, so I'm sure the coming weeks will give us more clarity on that. And I think, 𝐼𝐬𝐳, what you said is right, that a lot of these smaller class towns that we normally operate, it could be up to any generic organization that would like to use that as a model to come close to the doctors so that the patients are benefited. So the topics can be absolutely patient-centric. It could be seasonal. It could be depending on the company's range of products. So those are all possible. Those are all possible avenues. Who does it? The first mover advantage is always going to be the key there. But yes, a little more clarity on the kind of what kind of interactions pharma is allowed along with medical doctors will have to be wait and watched, and then probably these kind of actions can be done.
Thank you, Prashant and Gauri, for answering that question. I think there are a lot of discussions required for each and every clause that was there in the guideline, and I hope we have tried to cover. We have covered a few of them intensely, few of them superficially. But still, the discussion will go on. Thank you, Ambi, Prashant, and Gauri for being here with us, discussing a very, very relevant topic today. And best wishes to Gauri for her book, The Perfect Pill. It really answers the questions, many questions that were asked and unanswered during this session. Go and get your copy of The Perfect Pill. It's a perfect book. So thank you, every participant who has joined today and participated or listened to the session at Zoom, at LinkedIn, at Facebook and YouTube channels of PharmaState Academy. We will keep bringing the right discussions for you as we always do. Thank you for trusting us. See you soon in the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are going to post a feedback form in the chat box, even in the WhatsApp group. So please give us your feedback. Give us the topics for your next webinars. So please give us that feedback that we really, really like to work upon and implement for you.
So we are ending the session now. Have a great day ahead.